Welcome to what has become a Thanksgiving tradition of sorts, right up there with turkey, parades, football. It's the annual Severe Weather Team 9 Winter Weather Outlook.
That's right, and over the next half hour, we will look ahead at what the atmosphere is hinting at for this upcoming winter season.
And yes, we will do our best to answer the question on everyone's mind.
When are we eating more pumpkin pie?
Well, I was thinking maybe more on the lines of how much snow we can expect. Since we are on the subject of snow, did you know that snowflakes come in different shapes? Take a look.
Hello everyone, let's talk about snow, specifically the different types of snowflakes we can get during the winter season. And this all happens thousands of feet up in the air before it even reaches the ground, specifically in the dendritic growth zone. So pretty much in the cloud before it starts to precipitate. And specifically even further, it depends on the temperature and saturation of the dendritic growth zone to see what types of snowflakes we get. So let's break it down a little bit. For thin plates, you need 25 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, needles 21 to 25, hollow columns 14 to 21, stellar plates 10 to 14, and 3 degrees to 10 degrees Fahrenheit for the ultimate snowflake, the dendrites, the holy grail of snowflakes is when you need those temperatures in the dendritic growth zone for them to form. And you may be asking, if it gets any lower than that, what happens? Well, we start to move back down the list of snowflake types. So next time you see it snowing, you can see just what the temperature in the dendritic growth zone was just by the type of snowflake you see on your car, on your sleeve, on your tongue. So check it out next time.
Thanks, Amanda. I love talking dendrites. Speaking of dendrites, they can add up fast, leading to accumulating snow. Did you know that the criteria for winter storm warnings are different across the country? For example, only 1 inch of forecast snowfall will lead to the issuance of a winter storm warning in southern locations such as Florida. Now, locally, a winter storm warning gets issued when 6 inches or more snow is expected in a period of 12 hours or less. Sometimes winter storm warnings are issued when 1/4 of an inch of ice or more is expected, along with some snow. A somewhat rare ice storm warning gets issued when only freezing rain falls, accumulating to 1/4 of an inch in 12 hours. Winter weather advisories are issued for snowfalls around 3 inches and or ice accumulation less than 1/4 of an inch.
Coming up next, have you ever wondered what goes into making a snow forecast? Jeff will show you why it's not as easy as you might think, plus a recap of last winter, but first a word from Snowbird.
What was the height of the world's tallest snowman? I'll have the answer when we return. What was the height of the world's tallest snowman? The world's tallest snowman was 113 feet tall and 7 inches. That is a tall snowman.
You got that right, Snowbird. Thank you. You will need lots of snow to build a snowman that tall. Have you ever wondered what goes into making a snow forecast? Chief Meteorologist Jeff Oeschlein explains.
Predicting exact snow amounts can be incredibly difficult. One key factor that we often talk about is the storm track. It's often key. One storm track that can deliver heavy snow to the area is a storm coming up the East Coast. An example of that, the superstorm of March 13th, 1993. Another storm track where low pressure comes in out of the Midwest, and then it weakens as it moves towards the Ohio Valley before jumping to the coast, and then it gets stronger. This system often spares the Ohio Valley from a lot of heavy snow, as it typically is snowing more so to our west and to our east, while the Ohio Valley can get left out in that scenario. Something else that can be a problem, winter precipitation, a degree or two difference aloft in the atmosphere. It means the difference of snow versus rain, sleet, or freezing rain. Once a snowflake melts, if it hits a layer above 32, it can't become a snowflake again. So the mixing can really mess up a winter forecast. And another thing is the temperature. You know, where snow is falling and the temperature is above freezing, 1 inch of liquid would equate to 5 inches of wet snow. Where the temperature is 30 degrees, that same amount of water would equate to 10 inches of snow. And at 18 degrees, you'd have 20 inches of snow. So the colder it is, the more snow, of course, you're able to squeeze out, and then it becomes light and fluffy. So this is why a lot of times in the winter we stress, don't focus so much on the amount of snow, but focus on the impacts. When will it affect travel? Focus on those impacts this winter instead of those snow amounts.
And of course, we will do our best this winter to convey those winter storm impacts with you so you are never caught off guard.
And we sort of had a break, when it comes to winter last winter for making difficult snow forecasts. This was one of our least snowiest winters on record.
Yeah, and temperature-wise also, we saw pretty decent temperatures. As we look at the average high, we saw around the upper 40s, so that's definitely nothing to bring a lot of snow to the area. Our average low was just under that freezing mark, so we're looking at the averages here. It's not giving too much in giveaways for snow to fall and accumulate. And even the warmest day was 74, and the coldest day, you would probably remember that stretch of time. We got a decent amount of time in the teens for the highest of the day, and then into the negatives for the night times. And as we look at our snow recap,
I was going to say, if you take away that period right around Christmas last year, there really wasn't a winter. I mean, that was it. It was pretty harsh. It was very cold around Christmas, but outside of that, that was it.
Yeah, it was like spring break already.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and even looking at the snow totals, we just were shy of 9 inches, and that wasn't because of lack of precipitation. We had at least 5 and change of inches of rain, and it was just too warm.
Yeah, and largest snowfall of 1.5 inches. I mean, that's ridiculous. A normal snowfall, just in case you're wondering in our area, it varies greatly, anywhere from 20 to as much as 40 inches in a winter season. Northern areas gets a little, in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, get a little bit more of a lake influence. That's why they're in that darker shading of blue. And you get to the further southwest from Caddis Point southwest, basically US 250 south and west. You don't get that lake influence quite as much. That's why your average snowfall totals are a little bit lower. Coming up, we are going to take a look at a big change, though, for this upcoming winter, thanks to the development of El Nino. But
what's
first, well, we're going to find out. You're going to tell us about 4.5 minutes worth. That's coming up. But first, here's a look from Snowbird.
What is the average temperature in the North Pole during winter? I'll have the answer when we come back. The average temperature in the North Pole during winter is minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Brrr, I love it.
That might be perfect for a penguin, but that's a little too cold for me, and I like it cold. Thanks, Snowbird. Our last several winters have been influenced by cooler than average ocean temperatures along the equatorial Pacific, known as La Nina. Well, those waters have warmed significantly over the last several months, leading to the emergence of an El Nino. Meteorologist Nathan Shutt takes a dive into El Nino and explains how it will likely be a big player this winter.
During the winter forecasting time, you hear it a lot, La Nina, El Nino, and all indications are that for this upcoming winter, we will be dealing with El Nino conditions. But what exactly is an El Nino, and how does it impact the upcoming pattern for this winter? Well, let's start by explaining what an El Nino is. And to explain what an El Nino is, we have to take a little bit of a trip here further to the south and west. We're looking into the Pacific Ocean, and in this region is what's called the trade winds. Now, you may be more familiar with what's called the westerlies. Those are the winds that are blowing from the west to the east here in the United States. But in this region, the trade winds are blowing in the opposite direction. So trade winds are blowing from the east to the west. Now, as these winds blow across the surface of the Pacific Ocean, it's blowing that warmer water that resides near the surface further and further towards the west. So we're seeing a collection of above normal sea surface temperatures further west in the Pacific. Now, during an El Nino year, what is happening is these trade winds are weaker than normal. So not as much of that warm water is getting pushed further and further to the west, which allows for some above normal sea surface temperatures to develop into the eastern part of the Pacific near the equator. And you can spot this very easily if we were to look at sea surface temperature anomalies, same region, right, in the Pacific, looking near the equator. Notice then that El Nino. Notice how the above normal temperatures are centered into more of the eastern portion of the Pacific. And you can see that indicated by the more orange, the more red, indicating above average sea surface temperatures. This map, yes, taken November of this year. Now, if you were to look back just a year ago, you can spot very easily. Look how much of a difference we had just a year ago. Same location. Notice all the blue? That's La Nina conditions. That is below normal sea surface temperatures. And during a La Nina, to quickly explain, it's the opposite. So we're dealing with stronger than normal trade winds instead of weaker than normal. So we're seeing that warmer water get pushed further and further and further to the west, to the point where we actually start to see below normal sea surface temperatures develop in the eastern Pacific Ocean. But for this year, it's El Nino. So what happens typically in an El Nino winter for us here in the United States? Well, typically we see that Pacific jet like to hang out further south in the United States, which brings a wet pattern across the southern United States. A little bit further to the north then is where we typically see dry conditions set up across the Midwest, including for us here into the Ohio Valley. And then we're typically dealing with above normal temperatures across the Pacific Northwest and into the upper Midwest. Now, here's an interesting thing for you. Not all El Ninos are created equal. Yes, they vary and categorized by how much above normal are those sea surface temperatures into the eastern Pacific. Categories starting at weak, moderate, strong, and then going to very strong. And for this year, we're seeing that all model average pointing to December, January, and February coming out to about 1.8 degrees, which is very close. What we just saw, very close to that very strong El Nino of 2 degrees plus above normal sea surface temperatures. So that being said, a strong El Nino is likely for this upcoming winter, and it's very possible that we're dealing with that very strong El Nino. So we could break down these past winters, El Nino winters for us here in the Ohio Valley. We would also break down past El Nino winters by strength, which we did. And here's a look at the snowfall and temperature difference here, looking at the past El Ninos here in the Ohio Valley by strength. The typical trend here that we have for snowfall and temperature, the trend is the weaker the El Nino, typically trending than the more snow. And then it's the inverse for temperature, where the stronger the El Nino, typically we're seeing more average to above average temperatures, which snowfall makes sense, right? Typically in that El Nino pattern, we're dealing with more dry conditions. So dry conditions just naturally would yield less of that snowfall. But we all know it's just really a matter of the precipitation we get doesn't line up with the cold air, right? That's $1 million question. But these are the averages that we typically get for our El Ninos, categorizing it by the strength of the El Nino.
Well, good job, Nathan.
So that's what an El Nino is.
Yes, now he knows. You know, El Nino, it means little boy, and it's fishermen back off the coast of Peru long time ago noticed this. And because they noticed they were catching different fish when, of course, the temperature of the water changed. And where it comes from is the Christ child, because it peaks around Christmas time. So that's where El Nino basically got its name. Of course, the opposite of El Nino would be La Nina. And we're going to look back here, and Nathan did a great job explaining that. But yeah, 3 years, this is a graph that shows here 3 years of La Ninas in a row. And then now you can see how we're going into that El Nino, and it is a stronger one.
Yeah, and we're already seeing it play out so far for this year with those dry conditions. I mean, we're well under the 4-inch deficit of precipitation. At the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. So already seeing those dry conditions play out, and of course we've already seen it for November as well. We've been in overall a dry pattern.
And so that's El Nino, the fluctuations going from El Nino. And one of those years was 2015 and 16. So that was a very strong one of the strongest. We don't think it's going to be as strong this year as it was 2015-16. But you look at that year, and these are recent El Nino winters. And that year, because it was very strong, as Nathan was showing, the stronger the El Nino typically means it's warmer here and less snow, and that equated out in 2015-16. And also, I mean, look at Amanda. Look at some of those winters there. I mean, there were some blockbuster winters when it came to snowfall, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of snowfall that I would like to see, and I know a lot of people in the Ohio Valley want to see it too. They've just been telling me, when's the snow coming? When are we going to get the snowstorm? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't really look like it's going to be that this year, but I don't know.
Well, you look at that, it just really shows too that, you know, some El Ninos give you warm winters with lower snow. Some give you colder winters with a lot of snow.
Yeah.
So it's really the strength, as Nathan was saying about the El Nino. And some of the years that I look at that were very similar to the strength of this El Nino, at least what I think it's going to be. And it shows that dry pattern in the Ohio Valley. Now, a lot of people see dry, they think, well, it's not going to snow. You still could get a lot of snow with below normal precipitation.
And looking back at some of these years as well, I noted that even some of these years where, let's say one year was seeing less precipitation than the other, but that's the year that ended up with more snow.
Yeah.
So it just goes back to what you were saying, Jeff, how there's so much that comes into play when it comes to snowfall. Even if we have colder temperatures, obviously we get a lot more snow when it comes to that snow falling in a colder air mass. So there's just so much that goes into snowfall. So even, yes, with below normal precipitation, we can still add up quite a bit of snow.
And you can see the footprint of above normal precipitation in the southern part of the United States. And in terms of temperatures, it's typically cooler in the south, warmer towards the Canadian United States border. So that's a look at some of the years that are similar to what we expect this year.
Yeah, coming up next, the moment you've all been waiting for, the winter forecast. But first, we're going to check back in with Snowbird.
Which bird, also known as a snowbird, is known for its migration during the winter? I'll tell you when we come back. Oh, I love this question because it's about a bird also known as a snowbird, which is known for its migration during the winter. What is this bird's name? It's called the dark-eyed junco. That's amazing. I've never heard of that before.
Remember, Snowbird, you shouldn't judge a bird by its feathers. The question is, will this winter forecast be a feather in our cap, or will it have us eating crow?
Time will tell, but it's important to remember that seasonal forecasts are made differently than day-to-day forecasts.
Yeah, and these long-range forecasts focus more on trends such as our odds in our favor for above normal temperatures or below. We can't tell you whether or not it will snow on Christmas Day yet, but I mean, it's all up in the air. Sort of.
that far out in advance. But again, we sort of have an idea of trends, and that's what we're talking about. And speaking of trends, we know one thing, that our winters have been getting warmer. If anyone's been living around here for a long time, you know our winters are getting milder and milder, right?
Yeah. As we look at the trends here, seasonal trends, we do see that blue line, which is winter, and it's steeply increasing faster than all of the other seasons. And we have long-range forecasts that could tell us a little bit more about this, at least for now.
Yeah, looking at some of these, looking at the European model specifically, looking at the temperature anomaly, what model is trying to hint at as we do look ahead into December, January, and February, and boy, this just screams that El Nino. Look at the above normal temperatures there in the Pacific Northwest and the upper Midwest.
Yeah, right along the Canadian border of the United States as well. It's similar to those analog years. It looks very similar to what we just showed you there before the break, and that's a breakdown. One thing that they're sort of calling cards of El Ninos, if you want snow for Christmas, they tend to be milder, right? A little bit. December at least tends. It doesn't mean we can't have snow for Christmas, but overall, the month of December tends to be milder than average.
Less, yeah.
But then, look what happens in January, February. The jet cuts underneath. This is when things could get interesting around here. January, February. See how the colder air spreads into the eastern part of the United States? That's where a trough should be come January and February, and I think that's where we're going to have our winter, our backloaded winter of such. That's a look. This is a look at our forecast when it comes to temperatures. So again, we're starting.
Yeah, starting December, we're likely dealing with a little bit above normal temperatures, and then like we saw the European model hint at, we're thinking as well that we'll start to see those temperatures trend in the opposite direction, a bit below normal into January, February, and then could flip back to a bit above normal temperatures in March.
So again, we're not probably expecting like a real extreme cold winter, but there's going to be cold shots. There'll be more cold shots than there were last year. It may not be as impressive as it was around Christmas time to that degree, but I think we're going to have more cold shots, and that leads to more snow. So what is an average snowfall?
Yeah, so our average snowfall, as we look at our December through March kind of range there, we average around 7 inches in December, and again, we probably won't see that much going into our December, as we saw with the cold shot that's coming in for January, February time frame, and that's when we average 12 or 11 inches of snowfall there, and then we dwindle down to March. But you never want to count out March, because there's always a nice surprise snowstorm in March for people that don't
Beware of the Ides of March,
Exactly.
I believe they say, right?
Yeah.
So let's break down our snowfall forecast. Leaning towards below normal snowfall because it's running a little milder in December. But during Christmas week, late December, things could get interesting if that pattern changes on time. January into February. February, we hardly had any snow last February.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a totally different February this year compared to last year, and then maybe a little bit below normal as we head into March. So to put a bow on it and wrap it all up, what we're expecting this year. The temperature to run slightly above average, especially in December. December is going to be probably your longer period of milder weather, but there will be cold snaps in January and February. If you lay down snow, that just sort of refrigerates the air, and that could keep those cold snaps going. So if we're going to see prolonged cold spells, it's going to be during those months.
Yeah, and likely dealing obviously with overall colder temperatures on the average with respect to last winter for this winter, and I think we could say the same for snowfall as well, dealing with more than last winter and likely ending up below average, but still we could be ending up with a lot more snow than we had last year, which obviously we all remember was barely
nothing.
Anything.
I mean, the chances, it's almost impossible for us to have that little snow back-to-back winters. I guess I shouldn't say impossible, but it'd be very rare for that to occur. So, we showed you like around 20 to 40 inches is our range in the viewing area, and I would expect 25, 35 inches of snow this upcoming winter. You'll definitely have to use more salt this winter. You may have to break out a snow. It only takes one storm to make a winter memorable.
Yes.
You get one big one, everyone will say that was a bad winter. Perfect example, March 1993, we had that big blizzard. Everyone thinks 93 was a bad winter. You take away that blizzard, it wasn't all that bad of a winter, but that was a very, very bad winter. But what can go wrong with this? A lot could go wrong. It's a seasonal forecast. They're not as accurate as we were talking about as your day-to-day forecast. But we're confident that El Nino is going to be fairly strong.
The other thing too, the stronger the El Nino, typically the more driving factor. Those averages we were looking at typically do play out more in a stronger El Nino.
And time will tell, right?
Yeah,
time will tell. Yeah, we just got to get all those little factors lining up for a nice snowstorm for us.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this winter weather special and maybe learned something new along the way.
Whether it's sunny or snowy, you can count on Severe Weather Team 9 to bring you the weather story daily.
Yeah, and when you can't tune in, download our Severe Weather Team 9 app for radar forecasts along with notifications of any watches and warnings.
Now we can finally dig into that pumpkin pie.
Yes.
Have a great evening and happy holidays.
Hi, I'm Jamie Baker. Thanks for watching. Here's another video for you to watch, and please be sure to subscribe to our channel.